Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Cackling Pumpkins. This is another Sketchpad tour video. This one says Black and White Crimson #1, which I think this is like a concept art book. Sometimes I like to label and designate certain Sketchpads as concept art for certain projects, but eventually they just gravitate towards being general. Which is why it's hard to find certain sketches. I'm terrible at organizing things. At least I was. Still kind of suck. This is, I believe, 2016, it looks like. This is Natsu Dragon Eel from Fairy Tail, but I tried to give him like a Smash Brothers like moveset. And you could tell that like I was still trying to emulate anime. And to be fair, this wasn't the worst attempt. His torso is a little long, it looks like. That was definitely a problem I had. Sometimes torsos would be too long while legs would be too short. Some people say, I don't have to learn anatomy because my style doesn't need it. It's like, yeah, you do. Also gonna come up with this shit. Here's another take on the rejected Alice Starkson character, Leon Hovers, and this is just a list of different, it looks like a list of different Warner Brothers properties, because this is a point in time when, oh, no, you know what, no, I know what this guy is. I was gonna go ahead and create like a Kingdom Hearts-like story, but what if it was Warner Brothers? And it was not gonna be Kingdom Hearts. In fact, that's why it said black and white in the cover, because that's what I was gonna call it. It was gonna be like Kingdom Hearts-esque, but still kind of a similar idea, while still... It was weird. It was pointless to make it an original name or an original property, even though a lot of the worlds wouldn't be. If I were to do this idea, I'd still just make it like Kingdom Hearts-esque. It's an idea that still sticks in my head, you know? I like the idea of like, what if other companies had their own equivalent to Kingdom Hearts? Anyway, there's this guy. I really like his proportions. His dangly proportions. He's like yeah, I like this guy, this plague doctor looking motherfucker. I could see him stumbling around, while also looking somehow fancy. This right here was a vent piece I made, and god damn it, you know, one thing I hate about Sketchpad, sometimes they don't fucking turn over these things very easily. This was a vent piece because I was not happy with my current position in life. I was not happy with my figure, obviously. I had this point in time when I was gaining weight. Yeah, I made a lot of vent pieces. Nowadays, I don't really care about my shape, you know. I do care about my health, obviously, but at this point, I'm not, like, out of control. I'm a chunky monkey, don't get me wrong. But I'm not, like, I feel like if I make a comparison, it might be seen as, like, mean. Not mean to me, but mean to the thing I'm comparing myself to, you know what I mean? At least I'm not them. I would like to be skinnier, but I'm working on it. Goddamn. This was another vent piece, except this was more detailed. Goddamn, I was going through a lot back then, wasn't I? 2016 just wasn't a good year for me. Well, it wasn't really a good year for a lot of people. Yeah, a lot of people like to look back on 2016 and be like, oh, well, it was such a great year. It's like, you did not say the same thing back when that year was going. You were going on being like, it's the worst year ever. And in 2017, it's the worst year ever. 2018, it's the worst year ever. And don't you dare say, oh, but it was gradually just getting worse and worse because reality sucks and I'm an edgy bastard. Because you were looking back on these other years as if they were the greatest things ever. So, fuck off. I'm the edgelord here. Anyway, here's sort of like a concept for a Final Destination-esque stage. And I kind of like this design. You know, obviously there are some issues. You could probably tell by like, how do I put this? It doesn't look bad, but it looks very amateur. That's the word I'm looking for. Cool idea though, I still kind of like this. You know, just expand upon it more. I think it needs to be scaled better. Scaling, I think, was the biggest problem. But still, kind of cool looking. I was gonna make some platform fighter moveset. See how quick, like I said in the beginning of the video, see how I went from black and white and only like a few sketches were actually based on it, then we just moved on to other things immediately. I still have this habit. Anyway, this was for a character that only appeared once in my entire online career. But he was really important to me when I was younger, so I figured, like, if he's gonna, why not have him be in the game just because? Anyway, this is the Screaming Soul. This was based on his old 2013 iteration. His moveset would probably be different if I used a current version. Plus, one thing you gotta remember about making movesets for platform fighters, you gotta have some kind of fun mechanic. You can't always, like, you gotta design them around something. You can't just have, like, oh, random moves, because they might not really mesh, to say the least. Alright, moving on to the next. This is back when I was gonna have Tug and his friends be one big character called Team 103. I think this is before I gave him his cartoony appearance. This is absolutely 2016, no denying it. I didn't really have a lot planned for the movesets. This was called Sora Nero. I had this series called Life in Organization 13. It was a comedy series, and like my old Kingdom Hearts fanfiction, so I thought, take the original character I made for the Kingdom Hearts fanfics, and try to make him more original, even though he clearly isn't. That's clearly still an Organization 13 cloak. And also, his name was Carthex originally. Why did I change his name to Sora? You just made it more obvious, you fucking dweeb. I also had this series that only lasted like 1 or 2 episodes called Plugged in the Wrong Way. And there was a god inside that series that never made a visual appearance, but this is how he was supposed to look. His name was Regulus, God of the Machines. This is one of the earliest drawings of Ember. I made her back in 2014, actually. Her personality was more like Elizabeth back then. And she didn't have the ability, she didn't have all the firearms and guns, she didn't have the cool design, her hair wasn't fire yet. I mean, it was kind of fire-esque, it was still orange and hot, but I designed it more to be more like flames. And also she has this guy by him named Calvarium. Originally, her story was going to be called Dance of Suicide, and the idea was characters would end up in purgatory. And when they do, they would only end up in purgatory after suicide, right? So they'd fall from the sky, and if they land on a certain body part, that body part will be replicated as sort of like a guide. Obviously, that's not the case. Calvarium doesn't exist. These chain scythes don't exist anymore. The character is much more insane, crazy. Seth Lyrite. I guess this is the first instance of the Seth Lyrite name. Before I, used it for the Alice Darkson character. This is just literally like how I used to, like a more buff version of like emo me back in 2011, because I had a series called Grove of Spring Memories, and this is the point in time I guess I wanted to separate myself from my characters, in the sense that like I didn't want them to be like full-on self-inserts. This is the point in time when the shitty self-insert from like an early version of an Alice Darkson story, before, like I was turning him slowly into Zen Vasquez. But this is still, design-wise, just emo me, but I figured I looked different enough, and definitely now. This is, definitely a way different version of Alice Darkson. As you can see, they all have quotes. What's Alice's quote? Have you ever just felt sparks just by seeing someone? Look, she was a hopeless romantic back then. That was one of her qualities that had to be changed when it came to the newer version, because she is not a hopeless romantic anymore. Current Alice Darkson does not care about romance in the slightest. She is all about violence. She is all about death, destruction, and I love how loud my roommates are being. Usually they're respectful with how loud they want to talk, but now it seems like they want to be really loud. This is not a pre-existing character. I think I drew him here. His name is Grim McGee. I think he might have been inspired by Undertale, because that was kind of new around this point in time. This was a year after Undertale came out, I think. If I'm correct. Undertale came out in 2015, right? I think so. Then there's this man, not sure what he's about. There's an incomplete sketch, and there's a boxhead McGee. This is the point in time when I was trying to do thick outlines, sort of a precursor to my current style. You could see the growth slowly starting to form. Now this was like me trying to make a series involving cats, I guess? And then there's Melon Phone. I really liked the idea of Melon Phone for some reason. And there's a omnipotent being, I suppose. Hey, who cares about that though? Melon Phone. This was another take on DIV. I originally was going to make him more of like a generic horror monster. For those who don't know, I did bring him back for a video called Strangest Glitches? That was like a year ago. A year or 2 ago, I can't exactly remember. My perception of time from like 2021 to 2022 is off because of my mental health. But anyway, I decided to try to make him more human-like, but I didn't really like that idea. I still don't, you know? You gotta have some weird cartoony designs. Can't just have everything be humanoid. Have some variety. Here's another take on the Butler of Time. Before, I was even referring to myself as the Butler of Time, I think. I don't know who the dog is. I think that's meant to be like a big, more ferocious version of my dog. This drawing ain't bad. I think I was just trying to make myself look cooler than what I actually was. Here's some random doodles of chibi characters and some 2000s looking motherfucker. This is the point when the 2000s nostalgia was getting there. Yeah, maybe it was the wrong time to do this. I record typically at night, that's why everyone's sleeping, and they typically can't hear me, but I could definitely hear them. And my guinea pig's drinking water a lot. See here, cling, 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 cling. That just makes things a little difficult. Anyway, here's a series called Living in the Dark. I think it was going to be like an Addams Family kind of thing. Where it's about like a macabre family. I mean, there's basically Morticia. In fact, what was her name? Her name was just Mother. I think that was just a tagline for her, though, but that's basically Morticia. Here's the grandfather, who actually had a name named Vladimir. I think that was because I drank Vladimir vodka. Nowadays I don't. It got a little more expensive. Even though it's on the cheaper side, but, you know, everything counts these days. There's a big city area I was trying to draw. Not bad. You can tell I definitely just use a bunch of rulers, but to be fair, I still do the same thing. There's some kooky characters, another take on voodoo, some vampire-looking dude, some ghost girl, and ancient chain again. Once a Ben 10 alien, a fan-made Ben 10 alien, I kept trying to turn into an original thing. Which, to be fair, not a bad idea. Some crazy kooky characters. I think that's a Red from Angry Birds on the bottom left, but my interpretation of him, I think. And there's a chicken policeman. He's a precursor to Cockblock from Normal Horse. An angry duck character who's basically Duckman. This is before I learned Duckman was a thing. And a hyperactive coffee cup. Just another look on all of them. It's hard to bring this down because I'm very close to the tripod. Tripod's right here, actually. I think I drew this at work. This is a corrupted cash register. Still kind of like how this one looks. It's full of all sorts of stuff like worms, bugs, eyeballs, spikes. Ah, here he is. The first real sketch of Seth Lyrite. Back when he used to look like that. Obviously you could tell his inspiration was Sting from Fairy Tale. Oh yeah. His entire ability is centered around light, and he's still kind of similar. He's still comparable in some ways, but I would still say he's greatly changed. Here's a bird with 3 beaks. Be scared. Here's a bunch of random cartoon designs. This was the point in time when it had the idea of making a point-and-click game that was a horror game featuring cartoons. And these were some of the sketches I made for that. I still kind of like that idea, but I'm sure if I did it now, people would say, you're ripping off Bendy, or you're ripping off Cuphead. But you know what? I don't give a fuck. I know I could still do my own unique stuff. Like this, for example. Walrus. And that. There's some, I guess, giant, tall, searcher character. Not exactly sure what he was for, what his name is. There's supposed to be a robe, but it looks like a big thing of flesh. The robe is supposed to be part of his body, so maybe it is meant to be flesh-like. I'm not entirely sure. I would personally make it more leathery. That's what I would do if it's meant to be like a part of his body, but also somewhat separate. Still kind of like it, though. Once again, just kind of a case of lacking flair. Here's a redraw of a character I made in 2011 called Possessed to Soul. He was going to be sort of like this ancient being that his helmet's the actual character. He's actually taken over a person and changed their body for his own personal goals. He controls and possesses people with their souls and whatnot. I still kind of like him. Whenever I think of my old villain characters, he's the one I typically think of. But they say I got quite a smile. Here's a weird creature in a demented Chris McLean from Total Drama. I just merged him with a bunch of characters. I guess he's like some kind of horrible monster. I don't know. It was always kind of horrible when you think about it. Speaking of which, here's another cast of kooky characters. Ooh, here's a very, very early version of Elizabeth Darlington. Back when she had a really long dress. And she was supposed to be more of an action-oriented character into like a horror-esque story. It was going to be more horror-inspired rather than full-on horror. And here's this thing. I like this guy.
Look at me, I'm a big fucking... I don't know what I am, actually.
I don't know, but he looks cool. I like him. This was a concept for a logo called Bloodstained Battlefield, but I'm not exactly sure what this was going to be. It looks like by the platforms, it was going to be a platform fighter. I really love the idea of making a platform fighter. I have to do that one day. It's going to be the thing on my bucket list. These are concept art of Fearlings for Alice Darkson. Here's the Tripo, and the rest of these guys have yet to appear. This is before they were called Fearlings, and they took inspiration from certain fears. This is when they were called Akumus. So none of these guys, especially him, none of them were based on specific fears just yet. Not exactly sure what they could be. This guy could be like fear of stitching or surgery. This guy could be a fear of insects. Not exactly sure. I do kind of like this guy though. I like the big buff man. Here is the concept art for the Clythro Fearling. Yes, I know it says Lapori. I accidentally wrote down the wrong fear. That's actually, I think, fear of bunnies. That's the name. But anyway, here's, I think, the first drawing of the Clythro. I could be wrong. There might be an older one. Here was concept art of, like, I was gonna draw, like, exaggerated versions of, like, all the old pets we used to have when we lived in my childhood home. Jake the Black Lab, Luigi the Chihuahua. I had a hamster named Drake. My sister had a cat named Lily, who eventually became my cat. And Bobo, Luigi's favorite toy. Look at these. They're pretty alright designs. Here's some meme-worthy shit. You like this shit? Da booty is fresh. Da booty. Here's an attempt at a redesign of Ember. Once again, before her punk aesthetic and before she craved violence. I guess she was going to have a monstrous form. I guess she was probably going to look like this at one point. I'm not exactly sure what I had in mind specifically for the change, but this was definitely a very different point in time for the character. Still trying to figure out who she is. Oh, this guy here is a physical representation I made of anxiety. Now, I'm not exactly sure what any of this means, but I know that's what it is, because I distinctly remember that. Alright, there's an idea for a character I was going to have for... I can't remember what. If it was like an Alice Darkson character or a platform fighter character, he was going to be an ice-centered character with a spear, and he would have this orb thing at the end as like to make it both a spear and a club. I feel like maybe his mechanic would have been like all of his moves would be the same, but you could hit a button to switch the side that you're using, which would slightly change the stats of his attacks. Like the orb would probably be slower but more powerful. The spear or blade would be faster but weaker, or use more consecutive attacks. Not sure. Like that idea though. This is when I finally started to draw more cartoony versions of Tug and his friends. Jack had crazy teeth. You know what? I wish I stuck to that. Blake was originally just gonna have a mouth here, and Tug, I was just figuring out his shape. I guess I was designing him to look like an actual penguin instead of a toy penguin, because he doesn't have like the lines where his stitching would be. Here is some artwork for early versions of the idea that John the cat was going to be used for. These are going to be characters used for work-related story time videos, or things I hate about employment and whatnot. But this is before I decided to go for animal characters, or John in particular. This guy could be an early version of John, perhaps. Not entirely sure. This here is some generic knight character, not exactly sure what his deal is. It looks like he's got teeth on his helmet, that's pretty cool. But not really much I can say about him. Ah, here it is, here's John. Here's the very first sketch of John. Originally I was going to use him for a horror story, like a horror comedy involving another character, this cute cat girl who would have been kidnapped by him and chased around like a storage area as he wanted to use her to cook food. That idea would be given to Murda Chicken from Murda's Playnest, while John just became more of a cynical, tired, middle-aged man. I wouldn't say he's middle-aged, maybe he's more in his 30s. I haven't decided a set age for him. There's me trying to emulate Jonan Vasquez's style along with this thing right here. Not exactly sure what he's about, but that's a pretty cool design. Could use some work. There's some concepts for monsters. This pointy bandage man, and the baby thing. It looks like a little baby monster, but he's got Spider legs coming out of his back. Ain't that kooky? Ooh, I like him. He looks like a Dark Souls monster. There's a giant tree monster. I really like his design. Would have been impossible to animate, I tell you what. But I like him, though. That is a very cool looking tree monster. There is a very suspicious looking character. Look at this man. I'm not up to anything. You're up to something. Remember how I brought up 360 from the Ben 10 video and I wanted to do more with him? Well, there was an attempt. Not a big fan on his design. I think he should look more cool. Not sure what this is, though. Couldn't tell you. There's a duck character with a corrupted horror version of him. He lost his beak and now he's just dangling by his mate. And I guess, I don't know, is he an artist or is he French? Couldn't tell you. There's a big rubber hose boat walking about. It's like Steamboat Willie if the boat was alive, but except with much less interesting detail. Like the idea, though. Sometimes think about this thing. There's a take on Slender Man with some sort of slasher horror monster. With the symbol on his chest, I think it was meant to be like Ben 10 inspired, not clearly that's not the Omnitrix symbol. I think it was meant to be more inspired in that direction. Well, that's just Slender Man in a more kooky position. Here's some concept art, here's some artwork of Alice Darkson and the old version of Zen Vasquez back when he was called Zach Shadron. The necks are fucking massive, by the way. Here was a character called Malware. I guess he was going to be like a virus, but he doesn't look very virus-like. He looks very organic. And I guess that's the computer he would have came from? Not entirely sure. I do like the idea of Malware. Look at him. There is a sketch of Mr. Creepypasta. I was actually listening to his story today on YouTube. In fact, you know what? I think I actually have his story, like, going on here. Ah, shit. No, that's Creeps McPasta. My bad. But I was listening to a Mr. Creepypasta narration today. Here's Jordan underneath. This is back when he used to do a lot of gaming videos. As you can see, that's his mental health version. And Mr. Valentine on his chest. Oh, I forgot to bring his back up. My bad. There we go. Ain't he beautiful? There are two kooky pumpkin characters. Maybe they're meant to be the same one and one's just a transformation of the other. Maybe, but wouldn't the other one also have the nose? I don't know. He'll ask me. Here's some monsters, random monster designs, it seems. I'm not exactly sure what they were for. They all have numbers by them, so maybe they were alternate versions of a similar idea. One is this bear. 2 is this puzzle-looking head. 3 of this is this hollow octopus thing. 4 is a clubber. And 5 is this thing. I'm not exactly sure what that is. And that's just a shape. There is a big demon man with lots of horns and spikes. I feel like his design could be improved upon, but not a bad idea. There is some hanging upside down humanoid-esque creature. I'm not exactly sure what his deal is, but I kinda like him too. This is a point in time when I was making some really cool fleshy monsters. I'm kinda envious because I like to make these kind of creatures again. There is some alien-esque demon monster called Skilla. Not sure exactly what his deal would have been, if he was being made for a certain project or I just wanted to make a cool design. Kinda like him too. There is this Grim Reaper looking guy, but he has a guillotine on his back. I guess he would have shot out the blade. Not exactly sure. I like the idea of having a monster with a guillotine on his back. I'm not a big fan of this design though. I think I'd probably make him like a big kind of, oh god, you know, like the one of the Titans inside God of War? The one that you went inside God of War 1 and you had to fight inside God of War 3? I'd imagine something like that instead. Ooh! Here is an early version of a main character that was supposed to be used for Elizabeth's story. Her name was Violet, and the story was going to be called Arrhythmia. It was going to be based on, like, a public domain properties like fairy tales, folklore, legends, and whatnot. In fact, this guy was based on a fairy tale story, which is not public domain, by the way, called The Shadow. And the Shadow would have acted as a way of defense for Violet here, who has no memories on who she is. And the only reason she calls herself Violet is because her eye would be Violet. And she would have to go through several worlds, like Edgar Allan Poe stories, H.P. Lovecraft, folklore, urban legends, fairy tales, and slowly discover who she is. Originally, I was going to call Luigi Ouija as a way to separate himself from, like, you know, the Mario Luigi, but I figured, like, the only thing you have similar is the name. I don't think people would really make that many comparisons. As for who Yes No is, I have no idea. I think maybe this is a point in time when I was going to use Ouija for, like, a Courage Cowardly Dog-like story. Yes No, I think, is like a Ouija board. Oh, that's why I called him Ouija, I remember! Because it was going to be a Ouija board involved in a story. His name is going to sound like Ouija, as in Ouija board, and Yes No is like the pad thing that you put on to move around, or like the ghouls and spirits would move around to give you answers. There is some sort of action girl, not sure if this is like a redesign of another character or a new one. She has a sword called the Rakurai. I could be wrong. That's what it looks like it says. You'll tell me. That probably means something in Japanese. I don't know. I use Google Translate a lot for this stuff. And that's it. That is it for this one right here from 2016. Anyway. This one took a little bit longer. We had some interruptions. I think I'm going to take a break for today. I have 5 more to go through before I take a break for the series entirely. Not entirely as in like it's over, I mean like for now until like I have enough older Sketchpads to continue the series. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, hope you had a beautiful day, and I hope it gets even more beautiful. Your connection will be strange.